There's a certain kind of quiet that only shows up after something has already broken. Not the loud kind. Not slammed doors or shouting. The kind that sits in the room with you and refuses to leave. I still wake up some mornings and reach across the bed out of habit. My hand meets cold sheets. It's been long enough that I should expect that, but muscle memory is stubborn. For years, there was always warmth there. A steady breath. The comfort of knowing someone chose to be beside me. Now there's just space. It's strange how the smallest routines hurt the most. 2 coffee mugs in the cabinet. A second toothbrush I forgot to throw away. The way I still check my phone around the time she used to text that she was on her way home. I used to think trust was something solid. Like furniture. Heavy. Hard to move. You don't question whether it's there, you just build your life around it. What I didn't understand is that trust can disappear long before you notice the room feels empty. By the time I realized something was wrong, something essential had already been taken from me. Not money. Not time. Something quieter. The version of myself who believed without hesitation. I didn't lose her all at once. I lost certainty first. And that started with something so small I almost laughed at myself for noticing. It was an ordinary evening. Nothing dramatic. She was sitting across from me, scrolling through her phone the way she always did. I remember talking about something trivial, groceries, maybe plans for the weekend. I don't even remember what I said. What I remember is her smile. It wasn't for me. It was quick. Subtle. The kind of expression that appears when you read something private. I watched it flicker across her face and disappear just as fast. She tilted the screen away without thinking. I told myself I imagined it. People smile at their phones all the time. Still, something inside me paused. I asked, lightly, "What's so funny?" She didn't look up right away. Nothing. Just something stupid. It didn't seem important at the time. But her tone was wrong. I can't explain how I knew that. There was no accusation in my mind yet. No theory. Just a quiet awareness that I was suddenly outside of something. Like I'd walked into a room mid-conversation and everyone else knew the punchline. After that, I started noticing more. How quickly she flipped her phone face down. How often she took it into the other room. How her laughter came softer now, like it belonged somewhere else. I hated myself for watching. I'd never been suspicious before. I wasn't the jealous type. I trusted her in a way that felt automatic. That had always been our thing. We weren't dramatic. We weren't chaotic. We were solid. At least, I thought we were. The night I first felt that shift, I didn't confront her. I didn't demand explanations. I told myself I was being insecure. I even apologized for being quiet. But something had already changed. I went to bed that night beside her, listening to her breathe, and for the first time I felt like I was lying next to someone I didn't fully know. That's the moment I keep coming back to. Not the ending. Not the fallout. Just that small, almost invisible crack. If you're drawn to stories about betrayal, emotional truth, and the quiet ways trust can unravel, make sure you subscribe, like, and share this video. You never know which story will feel a little too close to home. Because once you start noticing the cracks, you can't go back to believing the glass was never broken. When I think back on the beginning, that's what makes it harder. There was nothing dark about us at first. No warning sirens. No chaos. No obvious imbalance. It felt easy. We met in a way that wasn't particularly special. Not some movie moment. Just 2 people crossing paths at the right time, both tired of shallow connections, both wanting something that felt real. She had this way of talking that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Not overly charming, not fake. Just present. Like she actually cared about what you were saying. That's what pulled me in. I remember thinking, finally, someone who isn't halfway out the door already. In the early days, everything was simple. We stayed up late talking about nothing and everything. Music we liked. The kind of life we wanted. The mistakes we didn't want to repeat. She told me things about her past that she said she didn't share with most people. I felt honored by that. I felt trusted. And I gave her the same. I wasn't perfect. I've never been the kind of person who opens up easily. But with her, it happened without effort. I started telling her things I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. There's a specific kind of closeness that forms when you think you're being seen fully. That's what it was. Or what I believed it was. Our relationship built gradually. It wasn't rushed, but it was steady. The kind of steady that makes you stop questioning whether it's real because it just keeps showing up. She remembered small details about me. The way I took my coffee. The stories I'd already told. The things that made me anxious. And I did the same for her. We became each other's default. If something good happened, she was the first person I wanted to tell. If something went wrong, she was where my mind went for comfort. That's how dependency starts, I think. Not in some unhealthy, dramatic way. Just in the quiet way two lives begin to wrap around each other. At some point, it stopped being my place and became ours. I didn't even notice when that shift happened. One day there were extra clothes in the closet. A second set of keys. Shared grocery lists on the fridge. Her laughter filled the rooms. Friends started referring to us as a unit. And I liked it. I liked belonging to something. Looking back, I can admit I probably needed that more than I realized. I'd spent a lot of time being independent, telling myself I was fine on my own. But being with her made me want permanence. She talked about the future in a way that felt natural. Not forced. Not pressured. Someday, she'd say, casually, like it was obvious. Someday trips. Someday home projects. Someday family gatherings where we'd be the ones hosting. It was never some grand declaration. Just small assumptions that made the future feel real. And I trusted those assumptions. I trusted her. That's the part that still sits heavy in my chest. Because trust wasn't something I gave her reluctantly. I gave it freely. There were moments, even early on, that might have meant something if I'd looked at them differently. She liked attention. Not in a cruel way. More like she needed to feel admired. Compliments landed deeply with her, almost like fuel. If someone flirted with her, she'd laugh it off. She'd tell me about it like it was nothing. I guess I still have it, she'd joke. And I'd smile, because I wanted her to feel good. I wanted her to feel chosen. Sometimes she'd disappear into her phone for long stretches, but I never questioned it. Everyone does that now. It felt normal. Sometimes she'd get distant when she was stressed, like she needed space but didn't know how to ask for it. I told myself that was just her personality. And maybe it was. Or maybe those were the first tiny gaps where something else could grow. But at the time, all I saw was the relationship we were building. I saw the way she held my hand in public. The way she leaned into me when she was tired. The way she said my name like it meant something. I wasn't blind. I was invested. I thought we were safe. That's what makes the foundation so painful in hindsight. It wasn't built on nothing. It wasn't a careless fling. It was built on real mornings, real conversations, real promises that didn't even have to be spoken out loud. She became part of my identity without me noticing. And maybe that's why, later, the idea of losing her didn't just feel like heartbreak. It felt like losing the shape of my life. Back then, though, I didn't know any of that was coming. I was still living inside the version of the story where love meant security. And I had no idea how fragile that security actually was. The first shift wasn't dramatic. There was no obvious lie. No lipstick on a collar. No missed anniversary. It was smaller than that. She started guarding her phone. Not in a way that screamed guilt. Just subtle changes. Turning it face down more often. Taking it with her when she walked to the kitchen. Bringing it into the bathroom. I told myself I was imagining the pattern. Everyone values privacy. Still, I noticed. Her schedule became less predictable. She'd say she was staying late, or meeting a friend, or running errands that somehow took longer than expected. None of it was impossible. None of it was provably false. Just slightly off. I'd ask how her night was. Fine, she'd say. Busy. And that would be it. There was a new distance in her voice. Not cold. Just distracted. Like part of her attention was somewhere else, even when she was sitting right in front of me. At first, I blamed stress. Then I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't as attentive as I used to be. Maybe I'd gotten comfortable. Relationships evolve. People settle. That's normal. I didn't want to be the insecure partner inventing problems. But the unease didn't leave. It grew quietly. One night, she fell asleep on the couch. Her phone buzzed beside her. Just once. I stared at it longer than I'd like to admit. I could have ignored it. I should have ignored it. Instead, I picked it up. The screen lit up with a notification preview. A name I didn't recognize. No contact photo. Just a short message that didn't look like something you'd send a casual friend. Still thinking about earlier. That was it. No context. No emojis. Nothing explicit. But it didn't feel friendly. My chest tightened, but my brain rushed to protect her. It could be work. It could be a joke. It could be anything. I put the phone back exactly where it had been. When she woke up, I didn't mention it. I told myself I trusted her. But something had shifted again. After that, I started noticing how often that same name appeared in notifications. Always late. Always brief. Always private. I never saw full conversations. Just fragments. And fragments are dangerous. They let your imagination fill in the worst parts. I tried asking casually once. Who's that? She barely looked up. Just someone from a project. It's nothing. It's nothing. I wanted to believe that. For days after, I watched myself become someone I didn't recognize. I'd sit across from her and study her expressions. I'd listen for changes in tone. I'd replay conversations in my head after they ended. When did I start doing that? When did love turn into surveillance? There's a moment in suspicion where you cross a line internally. You stop being passive. You start looking. I told myself I needed clarity. That doubt was worse than truth. So I began paying attention on purpose. I checked small inconsistencies in her stories. Times that didn't line up. Details that shifted slightly when repeated. Nothing explosive. Just enough to keep me awake at night. One evening, she left her laptop open on the table while she showered. I didn't plan to look. I swear I didn't. But I was already thinking about it. The screen was unlocked. An email tab open. I told myself I was just going to confirm I was being ridiculous. Instead, I found threads that weren't work-related at all. Long messages. Casual, but layered with something else. Inside jokes I didn't understand. References to moments I hadn't been part of. And then one line that made everything inside me go very still. Last night shouldn't have happened, but I'm not sorry. I read it twice. Then a third time. My hands felt numb. There wasn't a clear description. No explicit details. Just implication. But implication was enough. I closed the laptop exactly how I'd found it. When she came back into the room, hair damp, she smiled at me like she always did. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. Inside, though, something had cracked wide open. I didn't confront her. Not that night. I lay beside her later, staring at the ceiling while she slept, replaying that sentence in my mind. Last night shouldn't have happened. But I'm not sorry. I tried to convince myself there was another explanation. That I was misinterpreting. That context would change everything. But deep down, I knew. The problem wasn't just that something had happened. It was that she wasn't sorry. That told me more than any explicit confession could have. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye like nothing had changed. And I kissed her back. That was the moment I realized I was no longer just a partner. I was a witness. And once you become a witness to something like that, you can't go back to being innocent inside your own relationship. After that night, I stopped looking for reassurance. I started looking for confirmation. There's a difference. Reassurance is hopeful. Confirmation is quiet and cold. It assumes the worst and just wants it verified. I told myself I needed certainty before I did anything irreversible. Before I accused. Before I tore apart something we'd built. So I watched. I paid attention to patterns instead of words. She guarded her phone more carefully now. Password changed. Notifications muted. If I walked into a room unexpectedly, her screen would go dark instantly. Once, I asked why she'd changed her passcode. She shrugged. Security update. You know how it is. I nodded like that made sense. It probably did. But in the context of everything else, it felt deliberate. The final confirmation didn't come in some dramatic explosion. It came quietly. She told me she had a late meeting one evening. Said she'd probably be home after 10. She seemed calm when she said it. Casual. I said, "Okay. Drive safe." After she left, I sat in the living room longer than usual. I told myself I wasn't going to do anything irrational. I wasn't going to follow her or create a scene. But I checked something she didn't think about. We shared access to a tablet synced to her account. It had always been harmless, shared playlists, photos, random apps. That night, a message preview popped up there. Not hidden. Not deleted in time. Here already. Same place? My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to breathe. A few minutes later, another one. Can't wait to see you. There it was. No ambiguity. No room for imagination. I didn't need more. I didn't need explicit details. I didn't need pictures. I didn't need a confession. The tone alone told me everything I'd been trying not to know. I sat there staring at that screen for a long time. It's strange how your body reacts before your mind catches up. My hands felt cold. My chest tight. But my thoughts were slow. Almost detached. This is happening, I told myself. This is real. And the worst part wasn't even the fact that she was meeting someone. It was how normal the evening had felt before she left. She'd kissed me goodbye. She'd asked if I needed anything from the store on her way back. She'd smiled. That smile felt different now. Rehearsed. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't drive anywhere. I just sat in the quiet, watching the clock move forward, imagining where she was and who she was with. By the time she came home, I already knew. She walked in a little after 10:30. Calm. Relaxed. Not rushed. "How was your night?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "How was the meeting?" "Long," she replied. "I'm exhausted." She went straight to the bathroom. I stayed on the couch. I remember thinking, this is the second betrayal. The first was the act itself. The second was watching her lie without hesitation. When she came back out, she curled up beside me like she always did. Rested her head on my shoulder. For a second, my body reacted out of habit. I almost wrapped my arm around her. But I couldn't. I felt like I was sitting next to a stranger wearing her face. "Everything okay?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I said again. I don't know how I kept my voice steady. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to her breathe, knowing that somewhere in her mind, there were memories from just hours earlier that didn't include me. I kept replaying the message, "Can't wait to see you." That wasn't accidental. That wasn't confusion. That was intention. And suddenly, every small moment from the past weeks snapped into place. The late nights. The guarded phone. The subtle distance. The way she seemed both present and absent at the same time. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't insecure. I was being lied to. The realization didn't make me explode. It made me still. Something inside me hardened in a way I didn't expect. The hurt was there, but it was layered under something else, clarity. I could confront her immediately. I could scream. I could demand answers. But what would that change? She'd either deny it or admit it. Either way, the truth wouldn't disappear. Instead of rage, I felt something colder settle in. If she could plan this. If she could look me in the eye and lie so smoothly, then I could plan too. And that thought scared me almost as much as the betrayal itself. I didn't confront her the next day. Or the day after that. That's what people assume you do. That betrayal leads straight to an argument, to shouting, to tears on the kitchen floor. But I didn't have the energy for chaos. Chaos felt like something she could hide behind. I wanted the truth to stand on its own. So I became careful. Quiet. I moved through the days like normal. I went to work. I asked how she slept. I nodded at her stories. I played my role convincingly enough that she never seemed suspicious. And maybe that was the strangest part. How easy it was for her to keep lying when I was sitting right there. In the background, I started collecting what I needed. Not out of revenge, not at first. Out of necessity. I took screenshots when messages appeared on the sync devices. I saved dates. I noted inconsistencies. I didn't dig obsessively, but I gathered enough to know I wasn't imagining anything. Each new piece didn't shock me anymore. It just made me colder. Sometimes she'd laugh at something on her phone and I'd feel my stomach twist, but my face stayed neutral. I learned how to swallow reactions. I learned how to wait. There were moments she almost slipped. Once, she mentioned a place she claimed she'd never been. I said gently, "I thought you said you hadn't gone there." She blinked, then smiled too quickly. "Oh, right. I meant I hadn't been there in a long time." I let it go. Not because I believed her. Because I was done chasing explanations. I wasn't trying to fix anything anymore. I was trying to end it cleanly. The exposure wasn't something I planned as a performance. I didn't want drama. I didn't want to humiliate her in front of a crowd. I just wanted it to be real. Undeniable. There came a day when she asked me, almost casually, "Are we okay?" The question startled me. For a second, I wondered if she knew. I looked at her and saw something flicker, uncertainty, maybe guilt, maybe just fear of being caught. I said, yeah. Why wouldn't we be? She studied my face, searching. Then she smiled again, relieved. That smile made my decision final. A week later, I chose a moment that wasn't public, but wasn't private enough for her to twist into a conversation she could control. We were in a neutral space, somewhere ordinary. Somewhere that didn't belong emotionally to either of us. She thought we were there for something simple. I brought an envelope with me. My hands didn't shake, but my chest felt hollow. We sat across from each other. She talked about something meaningless, plans, errands, the future she was still pretending existed. I waited until she paused. Then I slid the envelope toward her. "What's this?" she asked, smiling faintly, like it was going to be something sweet. "Just read it," I said. Her smile faltered as she opened it. At first, her eyes moved normally over the page. Then they stopped. Her face changed in real time. Color draining, breath catching, the mask slipping so fast it almost looked like panic. "What is this?" she whispered. "It's what it looks like," I said. She flipped through the papers, faster now. Her hands trembling. There were printed messages. Dates. Proof she couldn't laugh off. She looked up at me with something like disbelief. You went through my things?" I stared at her. That was her first instinct. Not denial. Not apology. Deflection. "I didn't want to," I said quietly. "But you didn't leave me much choice." Her mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, she looked small. Not innocent. Just exposed. "I can explain," she said. I nodded slowly. "I'm sure you can." But explanations weren't what I wanted anymore. I stood up, feeling strangely weightless. She reached out, instinctively, like she could grab the moment before it fell apart. "Wait, please." I stepped back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I didn't even ask why. Because the why didn't matter as much as the fact that she'd done it at all. I walked away, leaving her sitting there with the truth in her hands. And as I stepped outside into the air, I realized something I hadn't prepared for. This wasn't satisfaction. It was just emptiness. And I knew the real aftermath was only beginning. The days after weren't dramatic in the way people imagine. There was no immediate peace. Just a slow collapse. She called. At first, constantly. I watched my phone light up again and again, her name filling the screen like nothing had changed. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. Long ones. Short ones. Angry ones. Pleading ones. "I made a mistake. Please talk to me. How could you do this without even giving me a chance?" That one almost made me laugh. A chance. As if I hadn't been living inside her choices for weeks without my consent. Eventually, she showed up at the door. I didn't open it. I stood on the other side, listening to her voice through the wood, softer than I'd ever heard it. "I don't know who you think I am," she said, "but I'm still me." I remember resting my forehead against the door, feeling something tighten in my chest. Because that was the problem. She was still her. And I was still me. But whatever us had been was gone. News travels faster than you think, even when you try to keep things contained. A couple of mutual friends reached out carefully, like they were walking through glass. One said, "I didn't want to believe it." Another admitted, quietly, "I suspected something, but I didn't think it was my place." That was the delayed validation that hit hardest. Other people had seen pieces of it. I had been the last to know fully. Her side of the story started appearing in fragments, filtered through other mouths. She was lonely. You were distant. It wasn't serious. It was strange hearing my life reduced to excuses. As if betrayal needed to be measured to count. Then, a few days later, I learned something I hadn't even asked for. The other person wasn't some stranger passing through her life. It was someone connected enough to feel like a second betrayal. Not a best friend. Not a sibling. But close enough that I'd shared space with them before. Laughed politely. Shaken their hand. That detail made my stomach turn in a way the messages hadn't. It meant this wasn't just secrecy. It was overlap. A double life existing right beside mine. When I finally spoke to her, just once, it wasn't a confrontation. It was a quiet exchange over the phone. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, voice shaking. I stayed silent for a moment. Then I asked, "Did you ever plan to tell me?" Another pause. "I don't know," she admitted. That answer was more honest than anything else she'd said. After we hung up, I sat alone for a long time, realizing revenge hadn't restored anything. It hadn't made me feel whole. It had just made the truth unavoidable. If this story is hitting something real for you, if you've ever felt that slow unraveling of trust, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't discovering the betrayal. It's realizing you still have to live in the world after it. In the weeks that followed, the noise faded. The calls stopped. The explanations dried up. Even the anger ran out of energy. What stayed was the quiet. I thought I would feel powerful after everything. In control. Like I'd taken back something that was stolen from me. Instead, I felt untethered. There's no trophy for being right about someone you loved. There's no celebration in proving your instincts were justified. Some nights, I'd sit in the living room with the lights off, replaying the moment I slid that envelope across the table. I'd ask myself if I'd done it for closure or for control. I'm still not sure. Part of me believes she deserved to be confronted with the truth in a way she couldn't twist. Another part of me wonders if I hardened too quickly. If I skipped a step somewhere between hurt and detachment. What I know now is this. Exposure doesn't heal you. It just draws a line. Healing is slower. Quieter. It happens in the mornings when you don't check your phone anymore. In the moments you stop replaying conversations that can't be changed. Betrayal reshapes you. Not just how you see the person who hurt you, but how you see yourself. If you found out the truth the way I did, quietly, without warning, would you have exposed it? Or would you have walked away without saying a word? If this story stayed with you, subscribe, like, and comment below with what you would have done. Because sometimes the hardest question isn't whether someone betrayed you. It's who you become after you find out.